Just after takeoff from Washington, D.C.'s National Airport, an Air Florida jet crashes into the icy Potomac River.
Washington Tower said that they'd lost an airplane and wanted us to go out and see what we could find.
National Park Policeman Gene Windsor and chopper pilot Don Usher find 6 people in the frigid waters. But the tower calls the chopper crew back due to hazardous conditions. At great personal risk, they choose to ignore the orders. The first rescue is Bert Hamilton. He is so desperate to climb aboard, he grabs hold of one of the chopper's skids. Gene coaxes him back into the water, then lowers a rope.
He got it around his chest, under his arms, and we picked him up out of the water and delivered him to the rescuers on the shore.
Gene and Don fly back to the wreckage and throw the rope to flight attendant Kelly Duncan, the only crew member to survive the crash.
And I raised my hand up to the sky, and it just kind of went up into the right place, and I pulled the rope around the back of me. It just took me right out of the water.
Next, Gene returns to the remaining survivors. He drops a line to Joe.
Joe Stiley got the line with the throwing ring on it, put his right arm and his head through that.
Joe prepares to be carried to safety.
But I couldn't leave Nikki, and I couldn't leave Priscilla, because there was nothing. I mean, if I left, they were going to go under.
Joe decides to take the 2 women with him.
I told him I needed 2 lines, so he dropped me down another line.
But Joe isn't sure if a triple rescue is even possible.
I was afraid he was going to try to lift us, and I was trying to calculate how that might work, but he didn't. He just towed us.
Joe Stiley grabbed Priscilla Tirado with his left arm, and Nikki Phelps grabbed a hold of the second rope and was holding on. We lost Nikki about halfway in. She dropped off the rope.
Joe passes within inches of Nikki, but is unable to reach her. Her life preserver is now her only hope.
Joe had a hold of her, but he had 2 broken legs, and the numbness from the hypothermia, he lost his grip on her. And Priscilla was left on a piece of ice.
Joe reaches the riverbank and is pulled ashore by paramedics. Gene turns his attention back to Priscilla.
We came back for Priscilla, and we attempted her rescue with the throwing ring. She was blind, as we found out later, by jet fuel in her eyes. And because she was blinded, she was just groping around. She could sense that there was something in the area. Someone was there.
Priscilla finally grabs onto the throw ring. The helicopter pulls her slowly through the water.
Her rescue was completed by Lenny Skutnik, who jumped into the water along with a DC fireman.
Lenny is not part of the rescue team. He is simply a bystander who has been watching from shore. Nikki is still stranded in the freezing water. Alone and terrified, she is in desperate need of help.
We went back for Nikki Phelps. We tried to get her again on the rope. It wasn't working. As it turned out, she had 2 broken arms. And so we sat right down next to her on the water, and I stepped out on the skid.
Gene unbuckles his safety harness and leans out toward Nikki. Don lowers the helicopter into the water, a dangerous move.
I grabbed hold of her, and she held on to me, and we flew right to shore.
As the survivors are rushed into ambulances, Gene and Don attempt one final rescue. A sixth survivor, Arland Williams, has been pinned in the wreckage since the plane crashed. If you look closely, you can see his hands in these dramatic pictures.
He said he couldn't get out, that he was pinned in, or his seatbelt had him in. Something was holding him there.
3 times Arland was handed the rope, and 3 times he unselfishly passed it on to someone else.
It took great courage on his part to pass it off, and I wanted a chance at repaying his courage.
But before Gene can get to Arland, the wreckage shifts and sinks. Ironically, Arland had survived the plane crash, but drowned before he could be rescued. The 5 survivors are taken to nearby hospitals. Miraculously, all recover. They look back on the events that day with both sadness and gratitude.
Don Usher and Gene Windsor can never be praised enough.
Those guys ignored their own safety just to arrive on the scene.
You want to have that chance to do good.
Sometime during the time I was out there, I was conscious it was my son's birthday. I really wanted to be around for some more of those.
After it was completed, and I called home and talked to my wife, and I told her about the 6th man. And I told her we weren't able to rescue him. And with that, the tears flowed. But he did save 5.